Look at Earth, from high above, from where there are no borders, no languages, no religions. Just a sphere blue, alive, dynamic. It spins in the vacuum of space, unceasingly. For billions of years, without witnesses, without cameras, without memory, we like to think we are the main characters on this stage, that life began with us, that we are the culmination. We see ourselves as the peak of evolution, the first to build cities, to bring light into the darkness of ignorance, to start counting the stars. But is that true? Can we say with full certainty, yes, we are the first? The Earth is older than imagination. It is over 4.5 billion years old. This is not just a number. It's an ocean of time in which our history is not even a drop. If we condensed Earth's history into a single calendar year, humanity would appear on the 31st of December, near 11:59 p.m. And everything we call civilization, our cities, writing, technology, it lasts only the last few seconds. Try to grasp that scale. Mountains have risen and fallen. Continents drifted, collided, broke, and created new lands. Oceans came and went. Life emerged and perished millions of times. And somewhere in this deep memory of the planet, there may have already been civilizations. Not ours. Not in our history. Stories not recorded in textbooks. We're used to seeing history as linear, from caves to pyramids, from bronze to computers. But maybe it's not a line. Maybe it's a circle, and we are just another turn of the wheel. Not the first. Maybe not the last. How do we know we're the first? That's what we were taught in school. But let's think. How much do we really know about the past? How much of what we perceive as history is just assumption? Theories built on fragments, shards, scattered mentions. We call something a civilization only if it left behind stone, metal, writing. But civilization is not just architecture. It's ideas, worldview, consciousness, and all of that can vanish quickly. What would be left of us in 10,000 years? Imagine a disaster, a global war, a pandemic, climate change, an asteroid, or even just the loss of electricity. What remains after a century, two, 1,000 years? Plastic? Ruins overgrown with moss? And in 10,000 years? In 100,000? The tallest skyscrapers will collapse. Civilization will fade. And after 200,000 years, geological processes will erase even the outlines of our cities. Then who will say we ever existed? History is not what happened. History is what remains. And that's why we know so little. We're used to statements. The first cities appeared 6,000 years ago. The first writing in Sumer. The first pyramids in Egypt. But why then do we find structures older than the pyramids? Why are there maps showing Antarctica without ice? Why do myths from cultures around the world mention a great flood, even those who never had contact with each other? Why did the Sumerians say that knowledge was given to them by gods who descended from the sky? Why did the Maya know about precession, a phenomenon difficult to detect even with telescopes? Why do Indian temples describe flying chariots and weapons like suns burning entire cities? Maybe we underestimate legends. Maybe we take history too literally, and forgot that everything important was once passed through allegories, metaphors. Suppose for a moment, what if 20, 50, 100,000 years ago there was a civilization, not like ours, perhaps not even human as we define it? What if it too developed from primitive to complex? What if it too created language, science, culture, and then vanished? Not because it was lesser, but because that's how nature works. Civilizations are like waves on water. They rise and fade. We only see what time lets us. The older something is, the harder it is to find. Most materials decompose. Even stone isn't eternal. And nature knows how to hide traces better than any human conspiracy. There are places that raise questions. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, Yonaguni, Japan, Baalbek, Lebanon. Sunken cities near India, Cuba, the Caribbean. We can't say exactly who built them. But we do know. They predate what official history allows. Could they be the remains of another civilization? Possibly. And if even one of these traces is real, it already means that human history is deeper than we thought. Now look at us. We live in a world where artificial intelligence processes language, where we explore DNA, launch into space, alter the climate. Yet despite all this, we cannot say with certainty what happened 10,000 years ago. We are smart, but very vulnerable. One global catastrophe and everything we know turns to legend. So before we go further, I invite you to pause, to forget for a moment everything we know, and simply ask, what if we are not the first? What if Earth has already seen civilizations? What if history is not a staircase, but a cycle, and we just another turn? The history we learn in schools and universities has a clear structure. It is divided into epochs, centuries, civilizations. It is based on archaeological discoveries, written sources, cultural monuments. It tells us about the development of humanity from primitive tribes to the modern globalized civilization. Everything appears logical, gradual, comprehensible. We start with hunter-gatherers who transition to a settled lifestyle, invent agriculture, build the first villages. Then the first cities emerge in Mesopotamia, the first laws, the first writing. This is the beginning of what is called civilized history. After that, Egypt, India, China, the Maya. Then Greece, Rome, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, and final your time. This is the official line. It is presented as indisputable. It is supported by artifacts dated using scientific methods. It is upheld by most historians, archaeologists, academic institutions. But even within this official framework, there are many blank spots, contradictions, and strange cases. First of all, the timeline. If we trust the official version, civilization in the sense of cities, writing, organized society, did not appear earlier than 6,000 years ago. Before that, the Stone Age. People lived in tribes, had no states, built no complex structures. But what then do we make of places like Göbekli Tepe, dated to 11,000 BCE? It's a complex of stone structures, massive, precisely carved, with intricate engravings and stellar orientation. According to official history, at that time people had no cities, no metal, no organized religion, and yet they were building megalithic structures. This contradicts the commonly accepted sequence, first agriculture, then cities, then temples, but Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite. Perhaps religion, myth, belief were the driving force of civilization, not its result. Next, the emergence of writing. It is believed that the earliest writing was Sumerian, around 3,200 BCE. But there are reports of older symbols found in various parts of the world in Vinca, Europe, the Indus Valley, China. We don't understand their meaning, so we don't recognize them as writing, but perhaps we simply cannot read them. The entire official history is based on fragments. Everything we know about ancient cultures comes from remnants, shards, ruins, stelae, and we piece together a picture from them, like an archaeologist completing a puzzle with only 5% of the pieces. We assume those pieces represent the whole, but that is merely an assumption. Another aspect, the appearance of knowledge. For example, the Sumerians already knew that the Earth was a sphere, that it orbited the sun. They had precise astronomical tables. Their calendar was more accurate than the Julian. But how? Who gave them that knowledge? They themselves wrote that they received it from gods, that these gods came down from the sky, taught them to count, to build, to heal. We interpret this as myth, allegory. But what if it is a recollection of something real, of a lost civilization that once possessed such knowledge and passed it on to later peoples? Egypt, the pyramids, massive structures built with centimeter-level precision, oriented to the constellations, with geometry difficult to replicate even today. We're told they were built by simple farmers with ropes, wooden rollers, and copper tools. But no modern attempt has successfully recreated such structures with those methods. Moreover, The pyramids appear to have stood there even before Egypt's classical civilization flourished. The Egyptians themselves didn't say they built them. They wrote that they inherited knowledge from the ancestors, and there are dozens of such examples. Cultures all over the planet speak of a golden age, a great cataclysm, ancestors from the sky, and all of them isolated from one another. Yet they tell the same story. Official history cannot explain this. It ignores or suppresses such cases, because its structure is linear, logical, controlled. When a fact arises that does not fit it is called an exception. When too many exceptions appear, the theory is not revised, only adjusted. But how many exceptions are needed to realize maybe our history is not what we think? It's time to look at an alternative version, a version where we are not the beginning, but a continuation. Not the first, but the next, where there were those who lived before us and left traces. We ignore them, but they are there. Across the world, objects are found that shouldn't exist. They don't fit the timeline, contradict accepted views of technological development, and have no logical explanation within official history. These are called anomalous artifacts. They're absent from textbooks, rarely discussed in academic circles, but they exist, and each one is like a crack in the official version of our past. One of the most well-known examples is an iron nail found inside a block of stone in Scotland. The stone in which it was discovered formed millions of years ago. According to all scientific understanding, humanity didn't exist back then, let alone metalworking. Yet the nail was there. How did it get inside? Coincidence? A hoax? But it's not an isolated case. Similar objects have been found elsewhere, metallic spheres with perfect symmetry embedded in rock hundreds of millions of years old. Some have grooves around their axis, as if they were made on a lathe. Another example, the Antikythera mechanism. Found in the sea off the coast of Greece, it was part of a ship's cargo that sank around the 1st century BCE. It's a complex system of bronze gears that, according to modern studies, functioned as an astronomical computer. It could track planetary movements, moon phases, and predict eclipses. Such mechanical precision wasn't achieved again until centuries later. Its existence in ancient Greece contradicts everything we know about classical technology. If this object were found in a modern museum, it would be labeled a contemporary creation. But it's real, and its origin is a mystery. Similar mysteries exist in the Americas. For instance, the Nazca lines in peromassive geoglyphs visible only from high altitude, hundreds of meters long, depicting animals, figures, abstract shapes. How could ancient people create them without flight, without seeing the whole image from the sky? Even more puzzling is that many of the lines form geometrically perfect shaped straight lines, parallels, equilateral triangles. Achieving such precision is difficult even today. In Egypt, there are signs of stonework that resemble the marks left by modern tools. Holes in granite show uniform spiral scoring, as if made by a high-speed drill. There are basalt blocks with surfaces so smooth they seem laser-cut. In Peru, Bolivia, and Lebanon, there are megaliths weighing hundreds of tons, transported and placed with such precision that not even a knife blade fits between them. These structures are astonishing not just for their size, but for the construction methods which we still cannot fully replicate today. We can only move such blocks using our most powerful cranes. But how was it done thousands of years ago? Some artifacts defy the very concept of ancient technology. For example, small figurines found in Colombia that resemble modern airplanes. Or ancient maps like the Piri Reis map, which shows Antarctica without its ice cover in the form it had tens of thousands of years ago. Who could have had such knowledge? All of this makes us think. Either our ancestors were far more advanced than we believe, or this knowledge and these technologies didn't originate from them. Perhaps they were inherited from another civilization known that existed before ours. A civilization with a high level of science, engineering, and astronomy. And after it disappeared, only fragments remained left behind by chance for us to find. Outliers that history cannot explain. And that change everything. All the peoples of the world have myths. These were passed down through generations long before writing ever existed. They're often dismissed as fiction, allegory, cultural fairy tales. But if we look more closely, many of these stories share the same essence. Regardless of continent, era, or language, they speak of one thing. A long time ago, another civilization existed on Earth. Powerful, advanced, magnificent. It built great cities, possessed extraordinary knowledge, lived in harmony, or, conversely, lost balance, and was destroyed. What remains are fragments, names, echoes preserved in legend. The most famous example is Atlantis. Described by Plato in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he spoke of a powerful maritime empire that existed 9,000 years before his time around 11,000 years ago. Atlantis possessed advanced technologies, stunning architecture, and influence over other peoples. But through pride and spiritual decay, it was destroyed by fire and water in a single night. This story is often labeled a myth, but why would Plato, a philosopher and thinker, invent such a tale? He claimed to have received the information from Egyptian priests who preserved ancient records. Other cultures have similar stories. In Mesopotamia, there's the myth of Eridu, the first city founded by the gods, which became a center of wisdom before being destroyed in a great flood. In the Maya myths, there are several suns eras, each ending in catastrophe, after which the world begins anew. In Hinduism, there is the concept of yugas, cycles of time. According to these, humanity has risen and fallen many times, reaching peaks of advancement before perishing in fire, water, or greed. We now live in the Kali Yugathe final, dark age. Polynesians tell of sunken lands where their ancestors once lived. The Hopi of North America have stories of previous worlds, the first destroyed by fire, the second by ice, the third by flood. We now live in the fourth, and everywhere, the same theme appears. There were others before us, wise, strong, but brought down by their own errors. Even the Bible hints at this. Before the flood, the world was different. The sons of God came unto the daughters of men. There were giants on the earth. Man's heart was corrupt. Then came the flood and wiped away all living things. Noah survived. And humanity began again. This isn't just a moral tale. It's a memory of the loss of an entire world. These stories couldn't have emerged by coincidence. They are too similar, even though they came from different corners of the planet at different times. They preserve a collective human memory. A memory of something that truly happened but doesn't fit into our current understanding of history. Maybe they're not myths at all, but memories. Distorted by time, cloaked in symbolism, yet real in essence. Ancient texts often mention gods who possess knowledge, flew into the sky, built enormous structures, created humanity. In Sumerian tablets, they're called the Anunnaki, in India Devas and Asuras. In South America, Viracocha, who came from the sea and taught the people. They all share similar traits, tall, light-skinned, bearded, wearing unusual garments. And everywhere, they appear after a catastrophe, as teachers, as bearers of knowledge that did not belong to ordinary people. These testimonies change everything. If we begin to treat myths as sources of truth, even symbolic truth, a completely different history of humanity unfolds before us. A history in which we are not the beginning, but the result. A history where civilization is not a single line of progress, but a wave that rises and falls, leaving behind fragments. And if we fail to understand this, we are doomed to repeat the path of those who came before us. If we are truly not the first civilization on this planet, then there must be evidence. Cities, structures, roads, perhaps even machines. But if such a civilization existed thousands or even tens of thousands of years ago, why don't we see it in museums? Why isn't it in our textbooks? Part of the answer lies in the water, literally. Over 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by oceans. During the last ice age, global sea levels were about 120 meters lower. This means that thousands of square kilometers of coastal land where humans have always preferred to live are now underwater. If an ancient civilization existed before the end of the Ice Age, its remains could have been completely submerged by the rising seas. One of the most well-known discoveries is Yonaguni, Japan, an underwater structure off the coast of the Ryukyu Islands. It features flat platforms, stair-like formations, right angles, massive terraces that resemble architecture. At first glance, it looks natural. But its symmetry, proportions, and orientation suggest a possible artificial origin. Some researchers believe it is the remains of a city submerged around 10,000 years ago. Mainstream science is skeptical because it challenges the accepted timeline, but the structure exists, and it's not alone. Near India, in the Gulf of Khambhat, traces of an ancient city have been found underwater. Straight roads, building foundations, artifacts. Radiocarbon dating of recovered items has shown ages over 9,000 years. If accurate, this would be one of the oldest cities ever discovered. Yet most scholars reject these results as simply too inconvenient. Underwater ruins have been found near Cuba, the Bahamas, the Mediterranean, and the Black Sea, all at depths where dry land once existed thousands of years ago. This isn't a coincidence. It's a global pattern. Traces of civilization not on land, but beneath the waves, hidden, unstudied, quietly set aside. Aside from water, there is another way to conceal the past, erase it, or at least prevent it from becoming part of official history. In many countries, artifacts that don't fit the academic narrative are simply ignored or stored away in archives. Museums have unclassified, collection subjects kept without context. Some researchers claim entire expeditions have been funded to hide or reclassify discoveries. Sometimes, erasure was literal. During the conquest of the Americas, the Spanish destroyed most of the Mayan codices. In Egypt, artifacts that contradicted the dynastic timeline were removed. How much was lost in medieval fires, inquisitions, revolutions? Every war isn't just a loss of lives, it's a loss of knowledge. Libraries, texts, manuscripts, stone tablets all burned, smashed, vanished. And yet, something remains, imperfect but compelling. Stones carved in ways unexplained by primitive tools, ruins beneath the sea that shouldn't exist. Maps depicting coastlines as they were before the Ice Age, and the more we search, the more such traces appear. So the question arises, do we truly not know, or do we simply not want to know? Because if the truth about an ancient civilization comes to light, everything would have to be reevaluated: history, archaeology, religion, science. This isn't just about new facts. It's a new paradigm, and for many, that is too dangerous. So the truth stays buried, underwater, in the sand, in the dark, waiting for us to be ready to see it. From time to time, we encounter artifacts that don't fit our understanding of the technological capabilities of the past. They are too precise, too advanced, or simply incomprehensible. Mainstream science tries to explain them through primitive means or remains silent. But when such artifacts appear in great numbers across different parts of the world, they are no longer isolated anomalies. They form a pattern that suggests the existence of a civilization deep in the past with a level of knowledge that surpasses our assumptions. Let's start with the megaliths. Across the globe, we find massive stone blocks used in the construction of temples, platforms, and walls. Some weigh dozens or even hundreds of tons. In Baalbek, Lebanon, stones weighing over 1,000 tons have been found. Modern cranes would struggle to move them. How were they transported and placed with such precision thousands of years ago? How were the stones fitted so tightly that not even a knife blade can pass between them? In Peru, at Sacsayhuaman, we see walls made of polygonal stones that interlock perfectly without any mortar. Each stone has a complex shape, and they appear to be poured into one another. This isn't just a technical feat, it demonstrates knowledge of materials, geometry, and engineering. The Egyptian pyramids are another example. Their precise alignment with the cardinal directions, mathematical proportions, and internal chambers defy the idea of them being simple tombs. They point to knowledge far beyond what we attribute to the civilization of the 4th millennium BCE, and this is only the surface. In various cultures, we find stone surfaces with holes drilled with such precision that only modern equipment could replicate them. Rotational tool marks, straight channels, polished edges. In the Temple of Horus in Egypt, there is a depiction resembling an electric light bulb. The Baghdad battery, a clay jar with metal components, may have been used to generate electricity. Ancient Indian texts describe flying machines, Vimanas, with specific details, materials, shapes, modes of motion. The Mahabharata even describes weapons resembling nuclear bombs with blinding flashes, heat waves, and severe burns. Though it's an epic, the level of detail surprises even modern physicists. In Pumapunku, Bolivia, architectural blocks show incisions and shapes so precise that one wonders what tools could have made them. How were they carving andesitia volcanic rock harder than iron? These are not myths. These are real objects that can be seen, measured, and studied, but they are either explained away with far-fetched theories or ignored altogether. Because otherwise, we must admit, in the distant past, there was technology, knowledge, and science that don't fit our current model of linear progress. Perhaps this civilization used different energy principles, not coal and oil, but resonance, magnetic fields, crystalline structures. Maybe they didn't build microprocessors but developed another form of high-technology bioenergetic, wave-based, even consciousness-driven. We don't know, but the fact is, they left traces behind. And these traces suggest they knew more than we are willing to admit. For thousands of years, humanity preserved knowledge through oral tradition. Before the invention of writing, myths, legends, songs, and tales were the primary means of storing memory. Today, we often see them as fantasies, fairy tales, or cultural metaphors. But what if many of these stories are based on real events? What if myths are encrypted history? Take the story of the Great Flood. This narrative appears in nearly every culture, from the Sumerians and Babylonians to the Maya, from the Indians to Siberian tribes. Noah, Utnapishtim, Devaki, Manu, Atris, different names, same story. Water covering the earth, a vessel saving the chosen, gods or spirits offering warnings. This isn't coincidence. It's collective memory of a catastrophe that occurred in deep antiquity. Perhaps it refers to the end of the last ice age, when melting glaciers caused ocean levels to rise and submerged vast lands. The same goes for stories of gods who descended from the sky, taught humans crafts, astronomy, and moral law. In ancient Egypt, these were Osiris and Thoth. In Sumer, Enki. In South America, Quetzalcoatl. In India, the Devas. They always appear after a disaster, restore order, build cities, and share knowledge. Sometimes they're depicted as luminous beings, sometimes as giants, sometimes as visitors from the stars. These figures are so consistent across cultures that it's hard to write it off as coincidence. There are tales of times when the earth was different, when there was no moon, or when the sun rose in the wrong direction. Myths of the sky changing, continents shifting, battles between heavenly fires. We might call it imagination, but some researchers believe these are descriptions of actual geocosmic events from prehistoric times. Dragons flying through the sky, celestial chariots, fiery arrows that incinerate cities, blades of light that cut through stone. We call these fantasies. Yet how often do modern technology lasers, rockets, flying machines resemble what is described in ancient texts? The story of Atlantis, described by Plato, is another example. It isn't just allegory. He gives specific locations, time frames, social structures, technologies, even materials. Plato doesn't claim it's a myth. He relays a story passed down from Egyptian priests. And although Atlantis hasn't been found, similar stories of vanished islands and sunken civilizations exist across the globe. If we begin to see myths not as inventions, but as fragments of memory passed through generations, a different picture of history emerges, one where humanity has already experienced rises and falls, where great civilizations have appeared and disappeared, where we are not the first, merely those who came after. Religions and ancient written texts are often viewed as realms of faith, moral guidance, and spiritual reflection. But if we look more closely, many of them contain references that could be interpreted as fragments of history about previous civilizations. Sometimes directly, sometimes in metaphor, they speak of events that don't fit into the conventional timeline of human development. The Bible, beyond the story of the Great Flood, includes tales of giants, the Nephilim, who were the sons of God and the daughters of men. These beings existed in pre-flood times and were described as possessing great power and knowledge. In the Book of Enoch, which is not included in the canonical Bible, these fallen angels teach humans metallurgy, plants, astronomy, and sorcery. It sounds like an account of contact with a more advanced being or civilization. Ancient Indian texts such as the Vedas, Upanishads, Mahabharata, and Ramayana contain not only philosophical ideas, but descriptions of weapons, flying machines, and astronomical knowledge. They mention cycles of time in which the universe is born, evolves, dies, and is reborn again. This cyclical concept of history is vastly different from the linear view we are accustomed to, and it implies that there were worlds and civilizations before us. Sumerian tablets describe the so-called king lists, stating that before the flood, kings ruled for thousands of years. They also speak of the Anunnaki beings from the heavens who came to Earth, created humans, and imparted knowledge. These are the oldest written records in human history, and they already reference technologies that don't align with their supposed era. Egyptian temple inscriptions hint at cycles of epochs or great years periods when gods ruled the earth, followed by demigods, and then by humans. This is echoed in Greek mythology, Golden Age, Silver, Bronze, and Heroic. Each ends in catastrophe and the beginning of a new phase. Chinese, Japanese, Mayan, and Aztec traditions all contain stories of great cleansings, after which the world was remade. These might involve fire, water, earthquakes, or changes in the sky's appearance, and in each case, these events are tied to moral decay, divine wrath, or the end of a great cycle. Notably, many of these sources speak of lost knowledge, libraries burned or drowned, temples that held scrolls, tablets, codes, sages who tried to preserve knowledge before disaster struck. The story of the Library of Alexandria is only one example. There are mentions of a hall of records beneath the pyramids, of the golden books of the Incas, of crystalline archives waiting to be discovered. Religious texts are not only spiritual legacies, they are also repositories of information about events that happened, but that we are either unwilling or unable to decode. They hold traces of civilizations that came before us, and if we learn to read between the lines, we'll see these sources are telling us again and again, we are not the first. Official archaeology presents a fairly clear picture of human development, from primitive tribes to agriculture, then the first cities, states, and writing. But more and more discoveries are challenging this linear model. There are artifacts that don't fit the timeline, materials that couldn't have been processed with primitive tools, and structures that astonish even modern engineers. Let's start with Göbekli Tepe, prehistoric temple complex in Turkey over 11,000 years old. It was built long before writing, before the official start of civilization, and features intricately carved stone blocks, symbolic engravings, and astronomical alignment. Who built it and how remains a mystery. Its discovery has reshaped our understanding of the prehistoric era. Pyramids not just in Egypt, but also in China, Bosnia, and South America display levels of precision in orientation, geometry, and scale that are difficult to achieve even today. Some researchers claim that their foundations predate the pyramids themselves and may have been constructed long before any recognized civilization. Megalithic sites like Stonehenge, Baalbek, and Sacsayhuaman contain blocks weighing hundreds of tons that were cut, moved, and fitted with astonishing precision. In many cases, we don't know how this was physically possible. Even with today's machinery, it would be a major challenge. On the ocean floor, traces of submerged cities have been found. Dwarka off the coast of India, Yonaguni in Japan, geometric structures near Cuba, at depths of several hundred meters. If these are genuine ruins, they would have been built thousands of years before the first cities, according to official history. There are tools and artifacts that shouldn't exist, metallic spheres with perfect symmetry found in rock layers over 2 billion years old, human footprints alongside dinosaur tracks, stones engraved with images of telescopes, heart surgery, and flying machines. These finds are usually ignored or dismissed as coincidences. Then there are the so-called technological mysteries, ancient batteries, precision, drilled holes in hard stone, depictions of gears, even analog computers like the Antikythera mechanism. They appear seemingly out of nowhere, then vanish, leaving us with the question: do we truly understand the timeline of technological development? None of this necessarily proves the existence of advanced prehistoric civilizations, but it does indicate one thing for certain: history is far more complex than we've been taught. And if these anomalies exist, perhaps they are remnants of those who lived before us, evidence that we are not the beginning. We are the continuation. Human memory is not just the individual ability to recall personal events. There is also collective memory, a set of images, symbols, stories passed down from generation to generation, sometimes even without words. It lives in myths, songs, fairy tales, rituals, art, language, and dreams. It is like a code that carries echoes of something greater than ourselves. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the psyche where archetypes dwell, shared across all human beings. But what if these archetypes are not just psychological figures, but echoes of real events that once took place in the distant past? What if the images of floods, giants, and lost lands are not fantasy, but dim memories of what humanity once experienced? In dreams, in meditative states, in altered consciousness, people often see scenes that have no logical explanation. They feel a longing for a lost world, for a home that doesn't exist on any map. These sensations may be traces of ancient memory deeper than any personal experience. Myths from all over the world often share the same structure: paradise, fall, catastrophe, rebirth, like an encrypted script passed onward. Why? Perhaps so we won't forget, perhaps to warn us, or perhaps so that one day we will remember. Subconsciously, we search for traces of something lost. Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, not just names from books, but symbols of forgotten memory. Humanity is like a child who has suffered trauma and cannot explain what happened, but remembers the pain, the images, the fragments. Why are we so drawn to the ancient, to forgotten knowledge, to legends of gods and heroes? Why do we feel that history runs deeper than the textbook says? Perhaps because within us is a voice that remembers. Not consciously, not in words, but emotionally, intuitively, through images. A voice that whispers to us, "You've seen this before. You've been here before. The story didn't start with you." This memory is not proof, but a clue. Not an artifact, but a key. It points to something beyond the official narrative. That our civilization is not an exception, but part of a long, complex, repeated journey of humanity. And perhaps the time will come when we remember it all. If we accept the idea that advanced civilizations existed before us, a logical question arises: why did they vanish? What could have erased an entire world, its cities, culture, and knowledge from the face of the earth? And why are we left only with fragments, hints, symbols, and mysteries? One obvious theory is global catastrophe. There is evidence of powerful natural disasters in the distant past: meteor impacts, massive volcanic eruptions, pole shifts, abrupt climate changes. Such an event could have destroyed infrastructure, disrupted social systems, caused famine, disease, and panic. humanity might have lost its achievements and had to start over almost from scratch. A second theory is war. If a civilization had reached a high level of development, it may have possessed powerful weapons. Self-destruction through conflict, technological disaster, or losing control over its own creations is a very realistic scenario. Could an ancient civilization have perished the same way we now fear nuclear war? A third possibility is moral or spiritual collapse. Perhaps technological progress outpaced ethical growth. A civilization may have lost its inner harmony, its connection to nature, its sense of purpose. Collapse from within is the most invisible, yet no less destructive path to extinction. Another theory suggests external influence. Suppose that in the distant past, humanity had contact with other life forms, possibly from space. Such contact could have spurred development or triggered catastrophe. Could the gods of ancient myths be memories of such beings? Another possibility is cyclicality. Perhaps history is not a straight line, but a circle. Civilizations rise, reach a peak, and fall, repeating the pattern, like tides, like the breath of the planet. And we may be just another wave. Disappearance does not necessarily mean complete annihilation. Perhaps some knowledge, culture, or people survived, migrating to other regions, blending with new societies, transforming into myths. History might have been rewritten, not out of malice, but out of the necessity to survive. We don't have answers, but we do have many theories, and the most important of them is this: whatever happened to previous civilizations could one day happen to us. That's why it's vital not only to seek truth, but to learn from it, to avoid repeating mistakes, to understand that true progress means not just technology, but wisdom, responsibility, and balance. Because the memory of the past is also a chance for the future. The story we've just unfolded is not finished. It's not just about what happened long ago, it's about us, today. We stand on the edge of time, at the peak of technological progress, with unprecedented power in our hands. But along with that power comes the same vulnerability that may have once brought down those who came before us. We are witnessing climate change, rising tensions between nations, pandemics, and social upheavals. We are playing with artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, space technologies, and all of this demands not just intelligence, but responsibility. The world is becoming more complex, more fragile. At times, it feels like we're repeating an old script, just with new scenery. The collective intuition of humanity seems to be sending a signal. We've been here before, a sense of déjà vu, not just in personal life, but on a historical scale. When science outpaces moral growth, when the gap between knowledge and wisdom grows too wide, crisis follows, and that crisis can be either a cleansing or an ending. World myths do not merely warn of past disasters, they seem to say, "This has already happened. Now you must decide, are you a continuation or a repetition?" We live in a time where everything is possible, great ascension or great collapse. And the very awareness that we are not the first might be the key to ensuring we are not the last. This chapter is not about fear, it's about choice. The past does not doom us, it warns us. And if we listen to its voice, we may see not only ourselves in the mirror of history, but a path forward. A path that requires a new kind of human, not just intelligent, but wise. Not just powerful, but responsible. Not just progressive, but whole. Because repetition is not inevitable. It can be avoided. But to do that, we must remember and choose to act differently. The world we live in is full of mysteries. Some we've learned to explain, others we simply feel with our skin, our intuition, our hearts. One of the deepest of these mysteries is the question, who are we? And did we really begin our story from nothing? Civilizations are like waves. They emerge, rise, and disappear, but each one leaves something behind. And even if the physical traces have vanished, the information endures in myths, in symbols, in the subconscious. We are the carriers of memory not only of our own era, but also of those who came before us. Perhaps we are not the first civilization on this planet, but perhaps we are the first capable of realizing that fact. In that realization lies our responsibility and our opportunity. Because knowledge of the past is not just nostalgia or curiosity, it is a mirror in which we may glimpse the future. If we truly want to create a stable, harmonious world, we must learn, not only from ourselves, but from those who silently left us messages through time. In stone, in the stars, in legends, in our dreams. Perhaps our entire history is an attempt to remember, and when we remember enough, we will be able to move forward not as those trapped in a cycle of forgetting, but as those who take responsibility. As those who see themselves not as temporary inhabitants, but as caretakers, co-creators, guardians of the earth. We do not have all the answers, but we can ask the right questions, and that is already a beginning. Because, in the end, what matters most is not who came before us, but who we will become after them. A glimpse into eternity is not an escape into the past. It is the ability to see ourselves as part of a great chain, a chain that does not have to be broken unless we allow it to be.